I still remember the very first time I heard about raw veganism, and back then I could have never imagined that I would ever try this lifestyle, let alone stick with it for more than 7 years. And looking back, some of these things I believed back then turned out to be completely wrong. But at the same time, this journey has taught me so many incredibly valuable lessons that I'm really grateful for today. So in this video, I want to share some of these lessons with you that have impacted my life in so many great ways. And I want to start out by saying something that wasn't really a lesson, but something I really needed to learn, and that is emotional regulation. Because when you eat raw food, there is no more escaping yourself. You are left with the true depth of who you are. There's no more numbing yourself with cooked food. Of course, there are many other things you can still use to numb yourself, but just nothing hits quite like food, I feel. So I really had to get to know myself and learn to sit with my feelings, the inner depth of my being, and just become very, very comfortable with who I am. And now let's get into the lessons. So the first really, really big one was to realize that it's usually not the big, grand things that are gonna make change in your life, in how you feel, your health, your weight, all these little things. It's the small things and being consistent with them. And if you've read The Compound Effect, you know how incredibly powerful it is to be consistent with a small thing for a long period of time. So I started to be really, really consistent with the small little things, and I started to cut out all the things that were requiring a lot of effort but weren't getting me results. They were just draining my willpower. They were draining my spark, even my joy for life. I cut out all of that, and that meant not being fully raw in the first few years. I, at one point, said, okay, I have enough of this yo-yo dieting and back and forth, and I don't want to be this person who is not sticking to what she set out to do. So I allowed myself to transition really slowly and, take one step at a time. Start with fruit for breakfast, and I had fruit for breakfast and lunch, but I always kept my dinners the way they were before. And then eventually I came to a point that I'm at now where I still allow myself to be flexible, but most of the times I just crave the salad like I don't see any other way anymore, because it's like a drug-like experience when you are on this consistently. And again, it's the very, very small things. And this kind of, I also drew into other areas of my life whether it's business and finance, whether it's my relationships, it's all these things where we don't need to do anything big. It's the small little things, like being consistent, setting up a system that allows you to do it every single day. This is what's really going to allow you for big, big results. And the next lesson is that it's not just about what we feed our body, but it's also about what we feed our mind. And what we feed our mind will affect what we feed our body. So when I watch a really, really dark movie, then I can always notice myself wanting to go more to more numbing foods as well. Versus when I feed myself either comedy, calm, gentle things, or uplifting personal development, spirituality, podcasts, YouTube videos, then I also find myself being in a higher vibe, and I just naturally feel more gravitating towards higher vibe foods. Not to say that cooked food isn't high vibe, but I think if you have experienced this way of eating for some time, you know what I'm talking about. This sense of like, it gives you pleasure to do things that also make you feel good, because you already feel good from within, you already feel good in your mind, and you want to keep feeding yourself positive thoughts, positive food. It's all like a never-ending cycle. The next lesson that I learned is one that I needed to really learn the hard way, and that is that guilt isn't getting you anywhere when it comes to progress. What's really going to help me create progress is when I consistently show up and when I'm really gentle and compassionate with myself. And being on a raw food diet has really forced me to, because when you first come to this lifestyle, you're not going to immediately succeed, like with anything in life, whether it's learning to play the piano or the guitar or learning a new language. You'll have to fail many, many times before you actually get it. And it's the same with adopting a new way of eating. You will have to fail many, 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 many times. At least that's how it's been for me. And with every time falling down, I learned better and better to accept myself, to accept where I'm at, to be gentle on myself, and to rise together with, the pitfalls that I fall into. Little joke, I'm currently at a golf club, so there's a lot of pitfalls here. No, just kidding. But yeah, I gently learned to rise and grow from that, and I replaced that guilt with self-compassion, and I dropped that perfectionism because it's just not getting you anywhere. And I really learned that with the raw food lifestyle, and I was able to implement that in other areas of my life as well, where I was kind of being hard on myself, and then I realized, hey, there's actually no need for me to be hard on myself here. I can grow and learn so much more quickly if I constantly repeat the mantra, okay, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I make mistakes. It's okay. I allow myself to make mistakes, and I grow through that. So huge learning lesson from this lifestyle that I'm so grateful for, that also allowed me to succeed in other areas more quickly, because now I've utilized that skill of using mistakes as your biggest teacher. And guilt, really, what guilt is, it's just a messenger, just like every other feeling in life. It's a messenger that wants to tell you you're not in alignment with what you set out to do. And here's room for growth. Here's room for improvement and for realignment. The next one is that judgment-free space that I needed to develop over time. Because when you embark on this journey, you start finding how the food you eat affects your health. And once you have seen what you can feel like, you just cannot unsee that. There's this famous saying, you cannot unsee what you have seen. And once you know how good you can feel, every time you will go back to the foods you used to eat that made you feel a different kind of way, you'll always crave going back to that feeling of lightness, of ease, of just unlimited energy. And that can lead and result in that guilt that I've been mentioning earlier in this video, where you start beating yourself up for having chosen foods that weren't making you feel that way that you have now gotten to know through raw foods. And in those moments, for me, it was really important to learn to develop that judgment-free space towards my experience here, towards the sensations in my body, and to learn to accept fully what is. And also that I have been able to take into other areas. So now when I'm with other people, it's become so much easier for me to accept them for who they are and to love all parts of them, the flaws and the harder times. And of course, sometimes when we feel really triggered, that's not always possible, but at least I've made it a very conscious habit to, when something comes up that I'm feeling irritated about, whether that's a sensation in my body from some food that I ate that maybe doesn't make me feel as good, or whether that's something someone else is saying, or a way that another person is behaving, or a way I'm behaving, maybe not, fully in alignment with my routines or my goals or whatever I set out to do, then creating that space where everything is allowed and everything is okay. So powerful. And then another really great one is the power of consistency, and how that really beats any discipline, any willpower, is really having a good, consistent routine. Because when I started to dial in a very nice routine that I've been talking about on this channel many times, where I look at it not as something rigid or boring, but something that is like a heartbeat, that now you can create a space in between those heartbeats with creativity, with love, with joy, with ecstasy, because you have so much energy that stability from your routine gives you. And that consistency, when you have that, incredible things that used to be so hard for me back in the days are all of a sudden so easy, because it's in my rhythm and in my habitual way of living. So 7 years ago when I started, I would have never thought that I would come to a point where exercising regularly and eating healthy would be so easy for me, because I had all these beliefs and old habits that made me think that it's hard to eat healthy, it's hard to move. I would rather sit on the couch and eat chips and do all these unhealthy things. And I thought that's way easier, and how would I ever be able to break out of these cycles? But then once I developed a new cycle, it just, like, I'm sometimes still blown away. So that, paired with the power of people and surrounding yourself with, the right kind that really fits me and my vibe and my energy, it's very, very amazing, and I love it so much. And the last point I want to talk about today is also to really embrace individuality, and that's also something I needed to learn throughout this lesson, because I remember 7 years ago when I first discovered raw food, I thought, this is the truth, this is the only way, and you cannot do anything else, and I wish the whole world would just eat like this tomorrow. And over time, I realized, no, that's just simply not true, because sure, there are things that make us feel good and there are things that don't make us feel so good. But generally, I don't think there is one right way. And I've also observed that within the raw food movement, that there are so many different ways of doing this lifestyle. And every single way is unique and beautiful and amazing in its own way. And every other way that isn't raw food is amazing too. And in the beginning, when I came to this, I myself have also tried imitating other kinds of, structures or routines or regimens that already existed out there. And what that has led me to was losing my inner spark and my joy and my creativity, because I was following something, from the outside versus listening to my own inner guidance and my own connection to my body, to my spirit, to my soul. And I was, more and more like cutting those ties, that connection, which is incredibly powerful. So now I've come to a point where I do not judge anyone, even, if they eat animal products, which, personally, I don't do that, but I don't judge anyone doing that, because I know we are all on our own journey. We all have gone through different experiences and we all need to learn different lessons. So yeah, I've kind of really started to embrace how we are all so unique, even within, when I go to a raw vegan festival and I'm seeing all these different people, and they all, when I talk to them, have found that way of eating in a different way. They are doing it for a different reason, and they all also embrace it in a different way by having a completely different way of what they eat and how they structure their day. It's all unique and it's still all amazing. And yeah, I think that's just been such a wonderful thing, because I think so often we hope that everyone would see things through our own lens, and everyone would see things and do things the way we think they're best, because then we would feel less alone. When in reality, it's so beautiful that we all are here to find our own way. And the more I've started embracing that, the more I've also given myself the allowance to do what I feel really called to do and what I really, really enjoy doing. And that also made it easier for me to do the raw food thing, because I no longer get affected when other people don't eat that way, when other people eat, unhealthy things. I know, okay, my path, however, is the raw food thing. So that's what I'm doing. If you now want to learn the missing link that I needed to add to the puzzle to make this lifestyle incredibly successful, then you can check out this video. And if you want to see what I eat on a daily basis, then you can check out this What I Eat in a Day playlist, where I take you through my days. And before I end this video, I also want to let you know I am doing another raw vegan challenge at the end of this month. So if you're interested in joining, then send me a DM with the words "I'm in" on WhatsApp, and I'll add you to the group. Link is in the description box.